All right, welcome back to the fantasy forecast. The algorithm is in. I've got some locks for week 4. Super excited to talk about those. Before that, let's go over some of the picks from last week. Saw a lot of good stuff as far as the picks. Just to briefly cover these, so quarterbacks, we killed it, right? The algorithm didn't lie with the quarterbacks. So we said Kirk Cousins, right? Kirk Cousins ended up with 25.6 points in PPR fantasy leagues. Tua had a huge game, 28.3. Jared Goff, 18. CJ Stroud, 20.6. So, I mean, we said all those last week, right? The algorithm is coming true. You just got to trust it, right? Few quarterbacks that I said not to start. Ryan Tannehill ended up with 4.16 points. Sam Howell ended with 0.6 points. Joe Burrow ended with 8.16, right? Um, I got some weird looks when I was saying don't start Joe Burrow. Now, he definitely looked better during Monday night's game against the Rams, but still, 8.16 points, that's not what you want out of your quarterback. A few other highlights on some receivers I said to start. Stephon Diggs, 19.1. Keenan Allen, 45.4. Crazy. And Mike Evans, 17. We did say Jordan Addison. He ended up with 11.2, which, like, it's not awful for a flex pick, but, it's right there in that gray area. We said Calvin Ridley not to start. He ended up with 7 points. Brandon Ayuk actually ended up not playing. Couple more highlights. Justice Hill didn't play. We said Kenneth Walker, who ended up with a huge game at 30.6 points. We said not to play Rashad White with 7.2 points. A.J. Dillon, 3.3 points. I'd strongly advise against Breece Hall, who ended up with 3.7 points. I was actually expecting more along the 5-6 point range, but 3.7. Really hope you took the advice. Really hope you didn't start him, because 3.7 for a running back, that's what loses you a matchup every week. So, all right. So we have 3 weeks of data now. This algorithm's only going to get better from here. But starting to see some really good trends, some really bad trends. On that note, let's hop into picks, right? All right, so quarterbacks. Quarterbacks, I said to start this week. We have Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins for the 3rd week in a row, and Tua. Quarterbacks, I'm saying to sit this week: Lamar Jackson, Zach Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, Dak Prescott, and Joshua Dobbs. Okay, to go into these briefly, what the algorithm is saying. Number one quarterback you're going to want to start this week is Justin Herbert. The Raiders defense, or the Raiders secondary, is decent, but they've allowed 7 passing touchdowns for the season. There's a couple outliers in there, with the Dolphins just absolutely tearing it up against them a few weeks ago. But I mean, we saw the Titans have a pretty good passing game against them. But yeah, so really, the algorithm saying the Chargers have allowed 7 passing touchdowns. The Chargers have thrown. Oh wait. The Raiders have allowed 7 passing touchdowns for the season. The Chargers have thrown 7 touchdowns. So I'm expecting Justin Herbert to throw at least 2 to 3 touchdowns based off this algorithm, based off what the Raiders have allowed. Russell Wilson. So the Broncos are playing Chicago. Chicago's defense just awful. Russell, it's weird, right? Like, we shouldn't think Russell Wilson's going to do great, but at the same time, it's all about the matchup. I know they just got blown out by the Dolphins, but that's more so on the Broncos defense than Russell Wilson himself. He's throwing touchdowns. It's just the defense kind of taking them out of the games by playing so bad. Our algorithm says Russell's going to throw over 250 with at least 2 touchdown passes. That's solid. He should have a nice 20-point week, 17 to 25, give or take. Jimmy Garoppolo, going back to this Chargers Raiders matchup, I like this. I think it's going to be like a heavy scoring game. The Chargers, they really don't have a very good secondary. Jimmy's averaged about 256 passing yards between 3 games. The Chargers have allowed 387 on average between the last 3 games. Algorithm says Jimmy should be in the 250 to 275 range passing wise. It also says he should throw 2 passing touchdowns. So, got Devontae Adams. This is really good news. Kirk Cousins. The Panthers defense is going to be one of the better defenses they've played in the last, for the whole season. Kirk's throwing for a ton of yards right now. He's hot. They're not winning games, but he's doing his thing. It's surprising they're not winning games, to be honest. Algorithm says 250 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Should be a decent game. Tua, got to play Tua. Got to play any Dolphins players you have right now while they're hot. Bills defense is good. I don't expect 70, 90 points, whatever it was. I'm not expecting that this week. But the algorithm does say Tua should throw for at least 240 yards with 2 touchdowns. That's what the algorithm says, knowing the Dolphins could be more. So some of the sits this week, a few of them aren't very surprising. Zach Wilson, I'm not going to talk about that. Not even going to waste the time. But Lamar Jackson, I'm seeing some interesting trends on why you shouldn't play Lamar Jackson. They're playing the Browns. This is a big divisional matchup, but the Browns have one of the best defenses in the league right now. They've barely allowed over 100 passing yards per game, right? They've only allowed 1 passing touchdown for the year, which kind of takes away some of Lamar's passing game. But then you start thinking, well, Lamar's a rushing quarterback too, right? Well, they're very good against the rushing play too. So it's very iffy. If you have Lamar Jackson, it's hard to not play him. But we saw week 1, he had 8 points. I'm expecting another game like that. Joshua Dobbs, he had a hot week, but they're playing against the 49ers, right? Algorithm says he shouldn't throw for over 100 yards, which is almost absurd in the NFL, but that's what the stats are saying. He may throw 1 touchdown according to the algorithm, but that's it. Shouldn't be thrown for 2. We got Ryan Tannehill. We've seen Tannehill look like a top 10 quarterback once this season. We've seen Tannehill look like a bottom 5 quarterback a couple times this season. He's not really worth the gamble, right? Bengals defense looked good against the Rams. Ryan Tannehill's only thrown 1 passing touchdown this year. Algorithm says he should be throwing 160 to 190 yards this game, and leaning more towards the 0 passing touchdowns with potentially 1 passing touchdown. And then last up, we have Dak Prescott. Cowboys, the Cowboys are good. They did just lose to Arizona, but it seems like their run game is more powerful than their passing game, right? Algorithm says that he will throw right under 200 yards, which isn't awful, but it's the touchdowns I'm worried about. That's where you get your points in a quarterback. It says he's likely to throw 1 passing touchdown, but that's it. The odds of him throwing 2 are a lot smaller. Is it worth the risk? That's the question. The wide receivers I have starting this week, we have Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Puka Nacua, Cam Sutton, and Devontae Adams. Wide receivers you need to sit this week are going to be Garrett Wilson, Zay Flowers, CeeDee Lamb, Hollywood Brown, and Chris Godwin. A lot of these kind of goes in line with some of the quarterbacks I said, right? Like Keenan Allen. I was talking about Justin Herbert having a huge game. Um, I mean, Mike Williams is out. Mike Williams is out for the rest of the year, and that's the Chargers' clear number 2 receiver, right? So if Herbert's having a big game, we may see the biggest game we've ever seen out of Keenan Allen. Stats say it's going to happen. He had 45 points last week. It's hard to beat that, but it's what the stats say. It's what the algorithm says. So I mean, if you have Keenan Allen, you're going to start him anyways. But just be ready. Like he may hold down your whole team this week. DK Metcalf against the Giants. Giants are allowing quite a few passing yards. If you have Tyler Lockett, that's also a good one to put in at like a flex, maybe wide receiver 2. These two should have a heyday though. Puka Nacua, very impressed by this guy. Very impressed. Let's see who the Rams have this week. The Rams have the Colts. Yeah, the Colts are allowing a lot of passing yards. Algorithm says Puka Nacua is the guy. I mean, he's catching most of these these catches for the Rams. So really liking Puka this week. Cam Sutton, already talked about Russell. But Cam Sutton is like the clear number 1 receiver in Denver right now based off like receptions, and really like most of the passes from Russell are going to Cam Sutton. So he's going to have a big comeback game. Should be Broncos like first win, or, maybe they do lose again and it's a close game. But if you have Cam Sutton, I know that's one that's kind of on the fence most times. This is a good week to start him for sure. Devontae Adams, kind of talked about it earlier. Should be a big game for Garoppolo. Devontae's getting the most shares. Jacoby Myers is also kind of around that ballpark. If you have Jacoby, I would start him. He's getting catches during games, not as many as Devontae, but he's a clear number 2. Should be a big passing game for Jimmy Garoppolo. So I really like Devontae Adams. All right, so as far as who to sit, Garrett Wilson, it sucks. It really sucks. You probably drafted him around 15 to 18 in your league, but the Jets' passing game is gone. Like, it's no Aaron Rodgers, your passing game's gone, right? Zach Wilson's not really the guy. I want to see him do well, but as far as right now, I haven't really seen anything, which makes Garrett Wilson just, I don't know, I'd throw him on the bench right now. Zay Flowers. I really like Zay Flowers. I personally have him in my league. I'm not going to be starting him this week just because of this Ravens-Browns matchup. Got a little tongue-tied there. But I don't know, I really like Zay Flowers, just not this week, right? The Browns are playing pretty dang good right now. Defense is incredible. Not really expecting much out of Lamar this week. Kind of hurts me to say that, but Zay Flowers, very, very questionable. CeeDee Lamb, we already talked about Dak. CeeDee gets a fair share of catches, but the stats say it should be lower than usual this game. We saw last year CeeDee would have games where he would pop off, be a top 3 receiver, and then we saw games where he barely caught anything. Stats say this is going to be one of those games where Dak just really won't get much going on the passing side. But I mean, the running side, they should be fine, but CeeDee's not a lock this week. Hollywood Brown, he had a good game last week, but the 49ers just aren't going to allow that. Like, it's not a whole lot to say there. And then Chris Godwin. So the Bucks were on fire there for a bit those first 2 weeks. We saw them let up against the Eagles. Stats show that the Eagles defense is pretty comparable to New Orleans defense, who they play. They play the Saints this week. Mike Evans is the clear number 1 guy on the Bucks. He's Baker Mayfield's favorite right now, which makes Chris Godwin not a lock this week. It's gonna be hard to not start him because I mean we saw with Brady, like he would really pop off some games, but this should be a low scoring game both ways, Saints and Bucks. And I mean, if anybody has a decent game, it'll be Mike Evans. But even then, stats show like Baker should have a rough time. So definitely start or not start Chris Godwin. See who else is on the waiver wire right now. See if you can make a trade. But yeah. And then as far as running backs go, all right, so we have Kenneth Walker. Yeah, who to start? Kenneth Walker, DeAndre Swift, James Cook, Javonte Williams, and Zach Moss. And then running backs you need to sit this week: Joe Mixon, Brian Robinson Jr., Breece Hall again, A.J. Dillon, and Rashad White. To go in these a little bit. So Kenneth Walker, I really like Kenneth Walker against the Giants, coming off a monster week last week. Yeah, the Giants just haven't been very good against the run game. So this should be another big week for Seattle. Expecting Kenneth Walker to have a similar game as last week. Pretty much guaranteed over 20 points in fantasy. It's more towards the 30 points like he did last week, then even better, right? But you got to start him. Let's see. Someone I would also like to mention, Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane, both for the Dolphins. Those are both starts too, especially after this last week. I'm leaning a little bit more towards, is it Devon Achane, just because he had 18 carries, Raheem had 13, but stats show that the Bills' defensive line isn't incredible. So this should be another big week for both of them. But one has to get more points than the other, right? So if you have either one, honestly, like start them. If you somehow ended up with both, go Achane. But Raheem's a good start too this week. All right, so DeAndre Swift, they're going to play the Commanders. Algorithm says DeAndre is going to have over 100, more like 130 rushing yards with a touchdown. Huge week for him. It's kind of leaning towards the 1 to 2 touchdown range. So if you have DeAndre, I know he's been like great some weeks and then okay some weeks, but this should be another big one. James Cook, I'm really liking this matchup, the Bills versus the Dolphins. Algorithm says over 100 rushing yards with a 33% chance of 2 touchdowns, right? Yeah, I know it's not 50-50 chance, it's 33% chance, but those are still pretty decent chances of 2 touchdowns. Start him. Start James Cook for sure. Javonte Williams. So they are playing the Bears. Bears have allowed 7 rushing touchdowns this year. I'm expecting him to have one of his bigger games that he's had. The math says he should have 1 to 2 touchdowns. I'm leaning more towards 2 touchdowns. Rushing yards won't be incredible, but it's the touchdowns where you get the points, right? So Javonte Williams, start him. Then Zach Moss, playing against the Rams. The rushing yards aren't crazy. I'm not expecting over 90 rushing yards, but I'm expecting heavy rushing touchdowns. Colts have allowed 4 rushing touchdowns, while the Rams have allowed 4 rushing touchdowns as well. Sorry, I had a typo in my notes. The Colts have had 4 rushing touchdowns. The Rams have allowed 4 rushing touchdowns, right? If Anthony Richardson's not playing, which I guess it's up in the air, but typically with concussions, I feel like players are out at least 2 weeks, then this is Zach Moss's game to run it around. As far as who to sit, I'll go into these briefly. Joe Mixon, playing against the Titans. Titans line is very solid. Titans defense is solid, but the line is like really good against the rush. So yeah, Joe Mixon, that's like, I know he's a big name. I know he pops off sometimes, but algorithm says this is not the week. This is like one of the clearer ones, right? Brian Robinson Jr., Eagles have the best D-line in the league. Simple as that. Brees Hall. The Jets don't look good at all, but they're playing Kansas City. Kansas City's only allowed one rushing touchdown for the year. I doubt they're going to let Brees Hall have a big game against them. Not a chance, really. A.J. Dillon, really, the algorithm says 60 yards at most, no rushing touchdowns against Detroit. I don't know. That's not what I want out of my starting running back. Rachaad White, playing against the Saints D-line. Saints have one of the top D-lines. Algorithm says Rachaad White may have around 70 to 85 yards rushing, which is like, it's okay, but there's a 66% chance he doesn't have a touchdown for the game, right? Those are high odds. If you're in Vegas and somebody says, hey, you have a 66% chance of winning right here, then you should be playing that game, right? Somebody says your running back has a 66% chance of not getting a touchdown, you just need to drop them at that point. At least just put them on your bench, but 66. All right. All right. So we have a couple call-in questions. They're actually from the same person, but he had two questions, and they're great questions. So I went in and took a few notes on these, threw some stats in. But if anybody has questions, just put them in the comments. I can cover them in next week's episode about week 5. But let's give it a listen real quick, and then I will talk about it.
Hey, Fantasy Forecast. Long-time viewer here. Love what you're doing with the show. It's won me multiple leagues. And I'm curious. I got Derrick Henry right now. Do we still think he has it, or is he tradable? What should I do with him?
All right. Thank you, Dominic from Kingsport, Tennessee. So Derrick Henry. So some notes on Derrick Henry, some stats, some trends I'm seeing. And even just as somebody who's watched a lot of football the last few years, we've seen Derrick Henry not really get hot until the second half of the year multiple times, right? It almost seems like this conversation comes up every year about him. It's like, oh, has Derrick Henry lost it, or is he not as good this year? So it's definitely, after 3 weeks, it's too early to give up on him. I would continue to start him just because, like, the Titans don't have much of a passing game established yet. As far as this week goes, the Bengals defense is just okay. Let's see. Algorithm says Derrick should have at least 80 rushing yards this week. Titans have only had 2 rushing touchdowns this year. The Bengals have only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns. It's not a great look average-wise, but looking at some statistics, there is a 66% chance the Titans have a rushing touchdown this game. The issue with that is that Tajee Spears is getting about a third to a fourth of snaps of rushing attempts. And so getting him in the mix like really lowers Derrick Henry's like chances of getting that touchdown. It's not really guaranteed Derrick is the man in the red zone, right? Now, like, I want to think that, but realistically, it's not the safest bet, right? The passing game, like I said earlier, Ryan Tannehill doesn't really have much of a passing game going, especially against the Browns. I mean, not the Browns, the Bengals, but I would play Derrick. I wouldn't give up on him yet. I would wait till like week 7 or 8 to maybe scavenger up a trade unless you can just get somebody incredible. But this week's not going to be his best week, but there's better weeks to come, right? All right, we got one more question from Dominic. I'm going to go ahead and let that play.
Hey, Fantasy Forecast. Got another question for you if you got time for me. Is George Pickens a starting wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in fantasy? I know Deontay Johnson's out and he's getting a little bit more catches than normal, but he just hasn't been hitting the numbers that I want to see my wide receivers get. Do I keep him in my lineup, or should I look for somebody else to replace him? Thanks for any information. I appreciate it.
All right, so question is revolving around George Pickens. So looking into the Steelers a little bit for this matchup against the Texans, really statistically, George Pickens isn't an awful choice as a flex or even as like a wide receiver too against the Texans. What I'm seeing in the algorithm is that the Texans are allowing on average over 200 yards passing per game, right? If you compare that to previous Steelers passing yards, the Steelers should throw for around 210 to 230. They should be slightly on the upper hand of that 200. And somebody's got to catch those balls, right? When you're looking at who's catching the balls, Pickens is tied for most receptions on the Steelers every game so far. So he's tied with Jaylen Warren twice, and he has slightly more receptions than Warren. So he's got the upper hand slightly as the favorite target on the Steelers. Najee Harris hasn't really been incredible. Steelers are leaning more towards the passing game right now. So, I mean, I like George Pickens. He's not going to be a top 5 receiver, maybe not even a top 10, but like in a flex position or, as your wide receiver too, if you don't have like some of these top wide receivers, he's going to get you points. He's going to get catches. His matchup this week against the Texans is pretty good. So definitely start him this week if you don't have other options, but I like Pickens this week. Yeah, so that's my picks. If you like any of these, if you hate any of these, just comment below. Let me know what you're thinking. If you got some questions, throw them in there. I do have a guest, the same guest as last week. We're going to cover some picks that he's thinking and probably going to go over some picks as far as like games too, right? So yeah, we'll get that going. All right, we got AJ Eagle on the pod. What's up, AJ?
What's going on, man?
Hey, you doing all right?
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Great. Just crunching these numbers and making these picks for the people,
Oh, yeah. Getting that forecast going. I feel you.
Let's go. All right. Real quick, I will just go over some results from last week. I already talked about them on the pod earlier, but really we're hot with the quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins, 25.6, Tua, 28, Jared Goff, 18, CJ Stroud, 20. I said not to play Ryan Tannehill. He had 4 points. Sam Howell had less than a point. Joe Burrow had 8 points. And then a couple of highlights from other picks. Stephon Diggs, 19. Keenan Allen, 45. Mike Evans, 17. Kenneth Walker, 30.6. And some of the ones I said not to play. Breece Hall, 3.7. A.J. Dillon, 3.3. Rashad White, 7.2. Calvin Ridley, 7 points. Did you see anything in these games from last week that you liked that you didn't like?
I feel like still just confused with the Jets. I know we kind of hinted at it or whatever earlier, but still just confused with the Jets, trying to figure out what their game is. Is it the quarterback? Is it the offensive line? We got 2 stud running backs. They got a stud receiver. Like, I'm just confused by them. Like, I feel like they have weapons, like I said, all over the place, and they still just can't get anything going. Like, Breece Hall, dude should be putting up, I feel like, 15 to 20 points a game. I'm not sure if he's gone over 15 points this season. I just confused by their whole take. So we'll see what happens going forward. But yeah.
Well, who you got on your picks this week?
For what position?
We'll start with quarterbacks.
Quarterback, Anthony Richardson again. Like I said, that was my knowledge. My bad. Last week I knew dude was hurt in the concussion protocol, but I wasn't sure if he was going to play or not. He ended up not playing. Him versus the Rams, I like him to hopefully run all over the place against them. We'll see. And then I also like Andy Dalton. I thought he looked pretty good last week. If Bryce Young still remains to be out, I like him to come in and, hit Adam Thielen for another 30 points like he did last week. So, yeah, I know it's and then for like a random kind of pick, I like Justin Fields. I'm kind of curious to see. I feel like he's in kind of a make it or break it game with being 0-3. They haven't really let him, I feel like, run all over the place like they did last year. The Broncos just gave up 70 points, so I could see him hopefully, having a big game and the Bears finally letting go and let him run all over the place for a win against the Broncos this week.
Yeah, looking at some of the analytics, right, as far as the rushing game goes, I do like Justin Fields. Not necessarily for the rushing yards he's put up, but for the rushing yards that the Broncos have allowed, right? They've allowed 7 rushing touchdowns this year. The Bears have put up 2 rushing touchdowns, so really, I would expect 1 or 2 this week, but defense is pretty bad. You said Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, again this week I'm going to plug him in there again just because he had 2 rushing touchdowns before he went into concussion. Before he was out for the game with a concussion, so I could see him hopefully doing that again against versus the Rams in Indianapolis at home again.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Rams, they're averaging, they're allowing a little over 100 yards per game rushing, 4 rushing touchdowns so far. So, it doesn't look bad as far as the rushing game goes. I don't like the passing game for that one, though. And they've only allowed 1 passing touchdown. Colts have thrown 3 passing touchdowns. Numbers don't look great on that one. But, if it's going to be if they're going to go for the ground game, then, yeah, Anthony Richardson looks like a pretty decent pick. Gardner, if it's Gardner Minshew this week, though, I'm definitely not starting him. Yeah, with the more passing against the Rams, I could see that. But I think Anthony Richardson's for real. I really do. I've said it before. He's a big body, able to run the ball, kind of like a Josh Allen, honestly. Maybe not as accurate right now with the ball, but definitely a big body that's looking to just run you over. So that's what I like with him. So we'll see what he can do this week. Difference between Josh Allen and Anthony Richardson is that Anthony Richardson is not on every single commercial.
Yeah, not yet. Not yet. Wait till he wins.
Oh, man. All right. Who else you got? You got receivers?
Receivers, I like Christian Watson to possibly come in. He just got medically cleared to play this game, so he's out of his protocol. Possibly for him to come in, be wide receiver 1 like he was with Aaron Rodgers against Detroit. And then also on the list, I had Jacoby Myers against the Chargers. I know Devontae Adams just had a huge game last week, like 40-something points. I think both of them could have big games against the Chargers in LA. And then on my list as well, if Andy Dalton plays, because I'm not sure if Bryce Young is exactly settled in yet. If Andy Dalton plays, Adam Thielen again, another kind of sleeper receiver. I think he had 20 points before this week, and then he had 30 points this week. So a little bit of a sleeper receiver, but you just have to have, I feel like he's an experienced receiver, possibly an experienced quarterback with him to where they can get on the same page and both have big games.
Yeah, I like Thielen on this one. Minnesota's just got an awful defense. That's the reason, right? They haven't won a game yet. Kirk Cousins is putting up crazy numbers, but it's just it's awful. They've allowed 7 passing touchdowns. Panthers have thrown 4 so far. That's going to be kind of skewed a little bit just because Andy Dalton versus Bryce Young. But I think either way, Panthers should have a pretty high-scoring game. Should be a high-scoring game all around.
Yeah, and then also on there, I had Calvin Ridley. I know he started pretty hot, kind of cooled off a little bit. I could see him, hopefully having another big game like he did the first game of the season against Atlanta, and I think that game's in London, right? I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
One of the two, but I could see him possibly popping off again, especially also coming after just a weird loss where the Houston just basically demolished them. Like a lot of weird games last week. But him and also on the list is Marquise Brown. I don't know, possibly popping off. I could see him having another consistent 50-point game as a wide receiver. I know it's against San Francisco, but I mean, he had a pretty good game against Dallas. So we'll see what happens on that one.
The thing that scares me about the Jacksonville game is it's a London game. And I feel like it's like really low scoring and it's kind of like a jet lag type thing, especially at 9 a.m. What's the time change between here and London?
I have no clue. I can tell you Korea, but I don't know the time change between here and London. I would imagine it's at least like 6 hours. They're probably 6 hours ahead, I would say, ish.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll look. Let me look real quick.
What do you think it is? What's your guess? I'm holding that 6.
I'm thinking like 10.
10?
10 hours.
We'll see. How about it's 8?
5. It's 5.
It's 5? Oh, it's supposed to have 6 then.
So that game would be 9. The 9 here would be 2. It'd be like 2 in the States. So that's really not like crazy, I guess.
Yeah, they get there. I'm pretty sure they get there like a week early anyway for those games to give them time to adjust.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I imagine it's an electric atmosphere. Anytime they do this overseas games, it seems like it's a sold out stadium. Almost no matter what sport it is. Was there 3 or 4 of them last year? One in Germany. I think there was 2 in London, and then one in Mexico. Right? They were all electric last year.
This is also the Pixar game.
Yeah, are you gonna watch that?
Like, they got some like crazy like graphics and stuff for the Pixar game. Like,
are you gonna watch that? Because like I'm kind of curious, dude, just to see what it's about.
Curious to see. Gonna be like you ever seen Ratatouille?
Yeah, banger.
I guess it's like Toy Story, but like I don't know.
It's definitely Toy Story, babe.
Ratatouille is just the first one that came to my mind.
Yeah, well, it wasn't right, you know. But it's definitely like a Toy Story themed game, and it's supposed to be like in Andy's room or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, I'm just kind of curious about how that's gonna be. But look, no matter how you're watching the game, look for Calvin Ridley to have a big game. All right, big redemption game.
Next, they're gonna have FanDuel for kids.
Yeah. What do you bet, like Monopoly money or something like that?
Nah, I mean, but
you got to put your parents' credit card in there.
It's like your kids. Go get your parents' card and bet on Woody to tackle Buzz or something.
Yeah, genius.
Oh, what running backs you liking this week?
Running backs, dude. I sent you the video. I know you got a couple laughs out of it. Alvin Kamara, I like for him to have a big game out of his 3-game suspension. Dude was locked up. He finally escaped against Tampa Bay. I'd like for him to have a big game, but honestly, I have no clue. If I had him, I would start him just based on what type of player he is. I know last season, realistically, he really didn't have that great of a year, but coming off 3-game suspension, especially with Jamal Williams out too, with Derek Carr possibly out. I don't know what his status is at the moment, but I could see him having a big game against Tampa Bay in New Orleans as well, so at home.
Yeah, the stats, I mean, Tampa Bay's got a pretty good defense against the rush. They've allowed 2 rushing touchdowns. Give or take 100 yards per game. But, I mean, we haven't seen Kamara play yet, right? Not this year.
Yeah.
Different. I mean, I expect him to want to come out there and kind of pop off too. So, not a bad pick. I know, like, a lot of people that probably have Kamara sitting on their bench are, like, anxious to play him. So,
Yeah, probably got him real late. Besides him, I have Zach Moss. I think he's played very well. His last 2 games put up over 20 points both games against the Rams. And then with Jonathan Taylor, I don't know if anyone really knows what his status is going forward. He was supposed to be out for 4 games. I know the Colts basically were like, if you want to get traded, like essentially go find a team or something, and they gave him like 4 games to do that on top of his so-called injury. I'm not sure how real that is. So with him possibly coming back next week, I could see it a more of a prove-it game for Zach Moss. I know he had a pretty good game last week, a receiving touchdown, put up like 22, 24 points, and then 20 points, I think, the week before that. So it has been a solid running back for the Colts. And then also besides him, I have Tyjae Spears on my list, just kind of almost out of like curiosity. Like, Derrick Henry, like, I know he was against a good defense last week with the Browns, but like just straight up could not get it going. 11 rushes, I think, for 20 yards. Like that's horrible for any running back, but especially for Derrick Henry. He's known for just running people over. This guy out-touched him last week. I know the Browns had a pretty sizable lead later in the game, so that could be possibly a reason why he got more touches than Derrick Henry as well. So I just have like an eye on him, just to see kind of what's going on with Derrick Henry. As my brother said, does Derrick Henry sounds that dog in him? Like, you know what I mean? It didn't look like it last week.
He does. I deep dived that one a little bit earlier in this episode before you hop on here, but I mean the Bengals have allowed a ton of rushing yards this year so far. They've only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns. Titans have only had 2 rushing touchdowns. So it's kind of that one's kind of up in the air, I guess. The numbers say that the Titans should only have 1 rushing touchdown this week, but it's also like who's the red zone guy now? Is it Tyjae Spears? Is it Derrick Henry? Like obviously Derrick Henry's getting more snaps, but at the same time, I mean Tyjae looks good. He looks explosive.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would personally start him yet, but I would definitely be watching, right?
Mm-hmm.
How the season starts playing out as far as who's the red zone
Mm-hmm.
running back, but not a bad choice. Not a bad choice, especially Derrick.
Yeah, especially with the weird running back stuff going on right now. I feel like they're just really – it's hard to find dominant running backs. You know what I mean? They're all just – I don't want to say subpar, but they're all kind of just in that level. And then you have someone who just randomly pops off like Mostert and a Shane or whatever his name, 2 of them from Miami. Like it's hard to find a consistent running back, I feel like, now in fantasy. Yeah. So with this weird running back, with all these deals going on, it's strange. The running back game right now is strange.
What running backs do you not like this week?
Like we already talked about the Jets or whatever, but obviously Breece Hall, I don't really like him. I have a lot of faith in the guy, and the dude hasn't produced literally at all. And like I said, I guess it's because of his offensive line. Zach Wilson barely has a second to make a decision to throw the ball, and then I don't know. I'm looking to trade him. If anybody out there wants Breece Hall, let me know. I'll trade him to you for a good pick. But besides him,
the Jets
are kind of hard to say
right now too.
The what?
Jets are about to play the Chiefs.
Yeah, and the Chiefs have they're constantly switching in like 3 running backs. You know what I mean? Just on top of the weird running back scenarios, like. They're constantly just filtering in running backs, and I feel like that's the new norm in the NFL. It's not one dominant running back. It's 2 above average running backs to 3 above average running backs that are just kind of in a rotation.
Yeah, Chiefs have only done 1 rushing touchdown this year so far. They're coming off a Swifty game, which
yeah,
only 10 Chiefs after the Swifty game,
Yeah, dude. I mean, they obviously played hard because old Tay was up there in the stands and got the win.
You're a huge Taylor Swift guy. What do you think about that?
You say because I'm a massive Taylor Swift guy?
Mm-hmm.
I am not a massive Taylor Swift guy. I am not her demographic literally at all. I'm a massive Travis Kelce guy, so I'm rooting for the guy. I hope he goes in there, seals the deal. But
Taylor Swift songs.
name what?
You're a true Travis Kelce fan. You could name 3 Taylor Swift songs.
Oh, okay. Nah, dude, I literally can't. I know 22 and like that's literally, dude, that's the only one I know. You named 3 Taylor Swift songs.
Yeah, I could, but I don't want to.
Oh, yeah?
But in my head, I'm naming 5 right now.
5?
Shake It Off. You heard Shake It Off?
Shake it off.
Yeah.
Honestly, bro, see, I don't know. You're more her demographic, I guess, not me.
You love good music, then consider me her demographic.
But I'm gonna, as we're like talking about running backs, I think running backs to keep an eye on still, and I know I said it last week, as Gibbs still out there in Detroit. I know I'm pretty sure David Montgomery is still going to be out for this coming game, and it seems like they've been limiting him on touches. I don't know, but I just feel like this guy is way more explosive than what we've seen. So possibly against Green Bay, he could come in and have the big explosive game we've all been predicting this coming week. I hope he does, but we'll just have to like keep an eye on that.
They've allowed a ton of rushing yards. Green Bay has.
Yeah, I just feel like
So
I feel like he should have way more points than what he's gotten.
Yeah,
that's just my personal opinion, I guess.
Oh, he's definitely worth looking at for sure.
Definitely an explosive player for sure. After watching him when he was at Alabama, maybe it just takes it a year or whatever to translate into the NFL, but I'm hoping it's sooner than that.
Let's go through all these games. Let's pick who we think is going to win. We can keep track of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ready?
What's the winner? What's the loser get?
Look at that.
We'll reveal it.
We'll reveal it on the next episode.
Yes, sir.
All right. Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers. Who you got?
I think I'm gonna go Detroit. I think Green Bay loses that game if Derek Carr stays in last week.
Okay. Yeah, give me Detroit on that one also. Atlanta Falcons, Jacksonville Jaguars.
I think Jacksonville wins the game. I think they have a big game after coming off that, like I said, weird loss against Houston last week. I think Desmond Ritter is just still not the guy for Atlanta.
Have you ever heard the rumors that Jacksonville would be like the first team to get relocated to London if they start doing that?
They go every year.
Yeah. So
every single year they go. So, I mean, it would make sense, I guess.
They don't want to lose in front of their second home, you know?
So you're going them too?
Yeah, I'm going Jacksonville. Rams, Colts.
Who'd you say? I'm sorry.
Rams and the Colts.
Rams, Colts. I think Anthony Richardson has a big game. I'm gonna go Colts.
Okay. I'm gonna go Rams on that one. Ravens, Browns.
I'm gonna go Browns.
Yeah, I agree. Browns. I mean, they're playing pretty good right now. Vikings, Panthers.
I think the Vikings get their first win. So Vikings.
I'm gonna go Panthers on this one.
But if Andy Dalton plays, I think it's a closer game than if Bryce Young plays.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Panthers. I mean, I agree. Andy Dalton's a little more seasoned, but we can see Bryce Young start popping off anytime too. Broncos, Bears.
So I think this might be the best possible game of the week. I'm gonna go Bears. Like I said, I think the Bears. It's time to just let Justin Fields just run all over the place. So it's possible the dude rushes for 200 yards and Bears to win the game. Broncos give up another 30 points in this game.
I'm going Broncos, just because the Bears defense is just as bad.
You think low scoring or high scoring in that game?
I think high scoring. I think both of these defenses are awful.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel as well.
Bengals, Titans.
I'm Bengals. I think it hurts for me to say it, but I think Bengals. I think they caught their wind, and I think they just keep moving on forward from this point out.
I'm going Titans on this one. It's at home, and I don't think the Bengals are still playing that great.
What if the Titans or what if the Bengals shut down Derrick Henry?
Then they'll probably win, but we'll see. I'm taking Titans on that one. Buccaneers, Saints.
Bucks Saints. Damn, that might be a close game. With Jameis Winston, I'm gonna go Bucks, but I still think Alvin Kamara has a big game because of Jameis Winston. So, but Bucks. I think the Bucks win the game.
I'm going Saints. Just like you said, Kamara's back. I think he should have a big game, hopefully. But I'm gonna go Saints on that one. Miami Dolphins, Buffalo Bills.
So this is the one, right? This is the preview game for Miami if to find out if they're real or not. Man, I don't know. I mean, this was a wild game last year. I'm going to go with Miami just because I'm pretty sure Jalen Waddle is going to be back as well.
Yeah.
So just another weapon added to their arsenal. They're just loaded all over the place, especially now that they got two running backs that are clearly dominant. I think Miami. So I guess Miami.
I'm taking Miami too.
I think that game. That's definitely the game of the week, though.
Yeah, I agree. I will definitely be tuning into that one.
Yeah.
Commanders, Eagles.
Eagles, and they get like 27 turnovers off of Hal.
Give me Commanders on this one.
You think? Why do you think so?
Just some of these passing stats. Just based off, I mean, the Eagles have a lot of passing yards. Commanders have a pretty decent defense. I'm taking Commanders. I think there's always a few upsets. I think that's the upset of the week right there.
So I will say about the Sam Howell. He's either, it seems because he's coming off of that big Bills loss, right? I think he threw 4 turnovers. Dude's either really on or really off.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I've seen him make some incredible throws, and then obviously he throws 4 turnovers the next game. So it just depends on how he shows up that day.
Steelers, Texans.
I don't know, man. I don't think the Steelers are very good. Honestly, I know they're coming off of 2 wins.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're very good. And then the Texans out of nowhere beat Jacksonville. I'm gonna go Texans. I think they keep it rolling.
I'm going to go Texans with you on that one. Chargers, Raiders.
Both coming off wins, right?
Yeah. No. Did the Chargers win?
Yeah, they beat Minnesota.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Chargers. I think is Eckler going to be back? Especially if Eckler is going to be back, I'm gonna go Chargers. I think he's coming back for that game. So with him back as well, I'm gonna go Chargers.
I'm gonna go Chargers as well. Cardinals, 49ers.
It's a weird one, right?
No, 49ers easily.
Yeah, I guess 49ers, but I mean, no one picked the Cardinals last week.
Yeah, I think I don't know. That don't seem like a fluke, but who knows? They might be better than we think, but
Is it in Arizona or in San Francisco?
Yeah.
San Francisco? Yeah, I'm gonna go 49ers and see what happens. I think Kyler Murray's supposed to be back like next couple of weeks, I think. So maybe that team flips around, but honestly I don't think so. I think I don't know. I just think they suck all around.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, dude, they were so good. And I feel like mid-season they just like took a huge dive last year. So we'll see.
Patriots, Cowboys.
Ooh. I'm gonna go Cowboys. Defensive game, low scoring though. I think Prescott still kind of sucks.
Give me the Patriots. I think Dak
The Patriots?
throws a couple picks this game.
Couple picks. Is it in New England?
It's in Dallas.
In Dallas? All right. See ya. Chiefs too?
Chiefs, Jets.
Oh, dude. With all those Taylor Swift fans that are now Chiefs fans, I think the Chiefs put up 100 on the Jets. Unless the Jets somehow can heal Aaron Rodgers' Achilles and bring him back to that game, I think the Chiefs definitely blow him out of the water.
Give me the Chiefs. You can wear your Travis Kelce jersey that you just bought this week.
Cool. You can wear your Taylor Swift shirt since you're such a big fan.
Seattle Seahawks, New York Giants.
Seahawks.
I'll take the Giants.
Weird game, but I'm gonna go Seahawks. Especially with them without Saquon still gonna be out. Pretty sure he's out multiple weeks.
I'm not sure. I'll have to look at that one. I think he's still out. I'll take Giants.
Sounds good.
Game. Starting to see a trend. Well, not really much of a trend, I guess, since the Bengals won this past Monday, but then the Bucks lost at home. So I'm gonna take Giants either way.
Home team?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's cool. You're gonna lose, but it's fine.
Well, we'll see who's more accurate on their picks next week then, and should be interesting.
Yeah, we'll figure out some sort of deal or punishment for the loser.
But yeah, we'll figure that out. But appreciate you hopping on the pod for sure, talking through these picks.
Yes, sir. It's always a great time. I love talking the NFL, so it was a lot of fun.
Cool. Thank you, man.
Yep, have a good one.
Hey, thanks for watching Fantasy Forecast. Make sure you like and subscribe. Comment any questions you have below, and we will cover those next week.